Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited for this episode. Before I'm introduced by our guest, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. Soren Kierkegaard. My dear friend Tony Capullo is back. He's a mentor, advisor, friend to countless people who help even more countless people with their businesses, their lives, their idiosyncrasies to create success, whether it's virtual training or events or building a business from bottom up or top down. Tony Capullo is the guy, and he's back to have a conversation with me. And thanks for coming back.
Jay, always a pleasure. We had a respite for 2 weeks and getting kind of antsy here. So I want to delve right in because today's episode is for your listeners. And the last several podcasts we delved into the granular part of culture. But today, Jay, we're going to delve into you. Right? There's a lot of people wondering, right? So my first question, because there's probably people who see you, tell us about the hair.
Okay.
Okay, and only because people see the long hair, right? I have no hair, I don't worry about it. But
this is good. The pandemic forced change. It was the night of that very uncertain, anxiety creating, well, on either side, nonpartisan in my mind, election, that I made a decision. Culturally, I thought, what can I give up in my behaviors to increase the likelihood that my family, which is myself and my partner in life, Jenna, fiance, and those around us that are employed and that we also serve as customers, an intermediate family, what can I give up to increase the likelihood that we can create the success that we are aiming towards more quickly? I always look at what can I give up? And with that, I made a few choices to give up a few things. One of them being, I said, I'm not going to consume alcohol irregularly, because maybe you have a drink with friends on a Friday. Even though that's a well-balanced, well-meaning initiative, it's more of giving something up that I want to do to gain energy, to give to my mission. I said, I'm not going to smoke cigars for a period of time because I started smoking cigars every damn time I hung out with Brad, and I was like loving it so much. And then I started buying cigars, and I started bringing cigars to my father-in-law, soon to be, and smoking cigars, trying to get him to smoke cigars. And I'm a lover, so like I want to bring people in to what I'm doing and what I'm about and enjoying, and I love all that stuff. So the point in this was, it wasn't about the vice in it as much as it was, I want us to be more successful more quickly. I feel like this is a great anchor, this uncertain time that we're living in culturally. It's fitting. And so for me to gain energy and focus, I'm going to give something up that I enjoy. It's not rational whatsoever. It's a very emotional, radical no for a radical yes. Now, where does the hair play in? I believe psychologically, it represented this evolution. I decided to not, I'm not the same me I was then. The hair represents something. I haven't had enough dialogue to unpack, and it's a great question for me. But that's where I'm going with it. I've got to continue exploring, ruminating around this question. But I have thought as far as this, that I think the hair symbolically represented this next evolution, because what also happened in the midst of the last 3 or so years was a tremendous amount of energy invested into research and development. Even beyond, so saying no to getting back some time from the radical no's. Like I enjoyed those edibles every once in a while, those cigars. I said, I'm not going to do any of this stuff for 4 years. I haven't broken.
Where'd you come up with? Where'd you come up with four? Just
Well, I made it up based on an election period. It was just a
okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. But I want to be clear, nonpartisan, meaning moderately how either side is interacting. I'm like saying this is a culture that can't communicate, which makes me as an employee, because I pay taxes, as an employee of the culture, I'm thinking I got to become self-employed, meaning I need to become more successful more quickly so that the consequences of our culture impact my family less. I use that as a motivation. So that being said, the hair, I think, represented this. Yeah. So cutting out all that time, focusing my energy. I read and listened to close to 1,000 books. I've learned so much. I'm not the same human. And I think the hair, and then writing, like working, we have not stopped. We've been on the road. We have had this unbelievable growth period as an organization, our client partners. It has been, not that it's been easy or something of that nature. Not that there's not lows within that, but we've embraced the lows. And I think the hair, it was a symptom of focus in other places. Meaning, okay, I'll put it even more clearly, or maybe less. The hair, I went from being very much inculcated in the crowd, speaking, marketing myself, to evolving into a consigliere advisor behind the scenes with those that are in more so client facing in the front. And I even think the hair represents that evolution. And not to say it's an either or, but it's part of the package. It's something I had to learn, to serve on that next level, to learn when to speak and when to listen. And the hair represents that. Or, by the way, the simple answer be, it just looked cool.
That's a great answer. So let me give you. I want to preface my next question with a story. In 2000, I was working on this major project in Oklahoma, and the CFO was a guy I knew very well, but he was, I don't want to say nerdy, but he was nerdy. And he called me in his office one day after we had been there for like a year, and he said to me, "Shut the door." I shut the door, and he said to me, and I remember we're there in business casual because that's what they told us to wear. He said, I don't know if anybody's told you, but the bald head and the tattoos, that ain't going over very, very well, right? So he gave me that speech, right? Which turned out to was not true because I went to the CEO, and I'm like, "Is there a problem?" He's like, "No." Like, he's like, "Who told you that?" Right? And I told him, he's like, right. But what it did was it made me more aware that people pass judgment quicker just on appearance. I'll give you an example, and somebody you and I both know is probably one of the brightest people we both know, but he has tattoos. He's riddled with them, all the way up to his wrists. But he's smart as hell, and you and I both agree with it. Somebody asked me for a speaker 2 years ago. I said, "This is your guy." I mean, there's nobody better than this guy for what you're asking. So I sent a clip of him speaking his resume, which is unbelievable, right? Guy doesn't call me back. So I called him after like 2 weeks. I'm like, "Hey, did you see what I sent you?" I thought he would jump at it. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not. No." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, I don't want him speaking to my team." I said, is it the tattoos? And he said, yes. Right. And I thought, wow, because in this day and age, in my mind, right, tattoos are mainstream to some degree, right? Long hair. Look, I don't really care what me personally, I don't care what somebody looks like. As long as they get the job done, I don't care. Has it crossed your mind? Because it crosses mine still. That I'm very careful about who sees these tattoos, right? But at some point I go, I don't give a shit. But does it cross your mind that someone would judge you because of it or not hire you because of it?
I think about the value of judgment constantly. Some of my biggest, I would say that most of my growth, I don't see how, oh, sorry. I want to say that I'm pro judgment. It's about how I can relate to the judgment. That is a call to my own emotional development, awareness, love, forgiveness, compassion, honesty, self awareness, which is the antithesis of like self deceit. So I think more of, so yes, and it's an opportunity. I would say that so that's what I would say is that I think that judgment can help me if I'm strong enough it, to hear
Okay.
what's underneath it. So for example, there's two things happening. There's those that are giving me the feedback, them, and then there's the feedback. And I want to be the type of representative culture, partner in life, friend, enemy, sparring partner of ideas, that can handle that judgment and separate the person from what they say. That's something I really want to be and want to teach. So
So
I
for the
think about, I guess this, but I think about what you're saying. Of course, I say I assume as much as anyone else, and I lean into it. But I wouldn't want, yeah. But I wouldn't want anyone to get the idea that I say, oh well, I don't care. No, I do care. The question is how I care, I guess.
so that's a all right, that's an excellent answer. So here's the next question. For the people listening, what advice would you give them? What is their takeaway? What advice would you give somebody who is almost away from the tattoos of the hair and say, you know what,
Yeah.
I don't really want to change my look because this is representative of who I am.
Well, all right,
But I also
let's
don't
use a
want, but I don't
tattoo
want
example.
what?
Let's use a tattoo example. I would say here we go. Let's say that I said only be who you are. Be you, right?
Right.
Well, but I right now, I'm not enough, meaning I am, but I'm not, in the sense that I'm going to continue unlearning. If I'm actually growing, I need other people to criticize, like to be critical of where I could be less effective for myself and the world if I'm going to grow. So it's be yourself and evolve with feedback as best you can. So, example, we don't even know in that specific example, unless it could have been the conscious mind could have associated the disdain for the individual with the symbolic representation. This would be the insignias on the arm, on the shoulder, but it could have been something even unsaid or unspoken or subconscious of like maybe even what the person was saying or how they were saying it or their overall premises that wasn't in alignment with that culture. And things get cross-wired and associated. So people don't a lot of the time don't even know why they don't like someone is what I'm saying.
Right. So
They
someone
might
comes to you
just
and
say,
says,
"Oh, I don't like you because I associate the long hair with this or that with that, or the tattoo with this." But what they really don't like, they are not even either expressing or capable of expressing. So it's my job to figure out what they don't like.
all right, so go back to someone comes to you and says, hey, I listen to your podcast all the time. I love your show. I have long hair, right? Someone says that to you. You see, but Jay, some people won't hire me because of it. They're very conservative. Should I cut it? You say,
what's the reason that they are? Because yeah, I'm sorry asking questions like
no, it's a tough question, but there's somebody that's listening out there who may not have long hair, but they may have tattoos. I can't get rid of them. I'm an cat.
okay. So my answer is be. It would be you and be aware that you to be you. You have to. Like, it will be helpful to evolve, and so it depends on the feedback loops. Like, how open am I? How open am I to feedback? Maybe I could learn something.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to just be dogmatic about this is what I want to do, almost like an implicit tantrum or something. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what I, and then just go into, like, let's say, an attack on the people that have their own a different set of values. It's if someone, it tends to be helpful to be oneself. However, oneself is paradoxical, because for oneself to be oneself has to evolve, and for one to evolve, how can one evolve without being open to feedback and evolving?
So years ago, when I had the consulting firm, I was interviewing someone, and this girl came in, and she had on a really nice business suit. She looked good. She had a great resume. And I don't put a lot of stock in resumes simply because people lie on them. But I liked her personality a lot, and I liked the way she answered questions. When she left, somebody said to me, "There's no way you could hire that girl." And I said, "Why not?" I said, "She showed up with a nose ring." I said, "So?" They're like, "Why would somebody show up for an interview with a nose ring?" Look, that's who she is.
Mm.
She's letting us know this is what you're getting, right? And I didn't take it as unprofessional. I just took it as she is comfortable in her own skin, and
Oh,
I like.
this is a really important topic in my view. Is that the idea of inclusion?
Yeah, well, it's
Is
is it
that
a
kind of
part of,
where you're going?
yeah, well, yeah, and then I have another
Oh,
question
sorry,
after.
sorry. Okay, I'm
No, no,
getting
no, no, no,
excited.
no, 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 no. So from my stand, the way I look at things, which is not how everybody else looks at things, but I look at things like, well, is she going to get me what the result that I need? If she does, I don't really care if she has a nose ring. I don't care. I could care less, right? Because even if she showed up at work without it, she's going to go home and put it back in, right? That's who she is. Like, so if somebody judges her, and we were dealing with very conservative hospitals and things, but she wasn't going to be in front of them. She was going to be behind the scenes. So I didn't really care if she showed up, dressed like Elvis. I don't care as long as she gets the work done. I didn't care. But I had I had a very liberal policy about that. I wanted people to be comfortable, and so I didn't really care. So from that standpoint, like if you came in and I didn't know you, now when I met you, you had short hair. You had short hair when I met you, right?
Yes, sir.
But I know you now. So whether your hair is long or short, you could dye it purple. I don't care. I just know what you're about, right? So I think sometimes people pass judgment before they get to know the person, right?
Yeah, and I would say if we all stop doing that, we die out as a species. So I'm all for the judgment. It's how we judge. So, like, I wrote this down when you were. This is the idea you gave me. This is the idea of the inclusion. We all have nose rings. Most are unrecognizable. They're hidden. The the recognizable nose rings are a call to confrontation. They make us look at ourselves. And so how we confront that reveals our culture. And so this idea of inclusion creates a lot of conflict because it forces us to look at ourselves. But I would argue, everyone has nose rings. Some are recognizable and some are not. And they're signifiers. So we're going to be seeing more and more and more in corporate culture, like America, the world, when it comes to employment, of people that look different and act different, being included as we continue to evolve in our working dynamics into the future. Is I don't think that's like slowing down. So I'll just say that much. But that's what came to mind when you.
I want for the people, and this is about your listeners, as you and I was talking about. Give the listeners three things. They got their pens out, right? Three things, three pieces of advice you would give to people who are entrepreneurs. You run a business. What, and I know it's hard to narrow it down to three, but if you had to say three simple pieces of advice for people wanting to run a business or starting a business, what would those three pieces of advice be? Because you have a good business.
The first piece of advice would be something I want to say more simply to the latter conversation. I just wrote this down. I wouldn't, so it's about principles. I wouldn't cut my hair to conform, but I would reform my behavior if I was convinced otherwise. So what can I call that in one word? Value driven.
Okay.
Like I'm not going to conform, but I'll reform based on dialogue. Like I'm open to learn. So like so that's number one. Then you ask for three things a business owner can what?
Three pieces of advice you give business owners or people starting a business based on your experience running a business.
Yeah. So one is goes back to what I just said, is like know what you stand for and why you do it. Tragedy. Have you faced tragedy? Because if you haven't, it may be tougher for you.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. I'll just, this is follow me on Threads. If you're listening to this, Janet said, get on Threads. And I've been using that like the Twitter. And I said this yesterday on there. I said, this is my answer. People who have not reached their limit of pain and adversity must fabricate it so they can gain a false confidence necessary to act out success according to their idealization of what success is. The issue at hand is that without the pain, the idealization is illusory. So all efforts are in vain. The solution for these individuals would be to serve one who has suffered deeply. To become a follower of a chosen master can be a righteous act, a meaningful endeavor, and revelatory. I'll just unpack this. If I haven't been through enough pain, I'm going to follow someone that has. The question becomes, what's that relationship look like? So if you're a business owner, I hope that you've had tragedy in your life to push you, because it will not be just wanting to fulfill your base needs of survival, like food, water, and shelter, and some poontang. It will have to be, it will have to be something like a whisper in the night that says, you need to do this. You are this.
What happens if somebody hasn't experienced tragedy?
They're going to work for someone who has. They're going to work with someone who has. Now, but of course, now this is the thing. There's so many contradictions in what I'm saying. And that's good, because we need feedback. We need discourse. It helps us to refine this thought, right? From our dissenters, from those that disagree. The likelihood is they can actually do whatever the hell they want, because we live in a world that gives more and more people the ability to do whatever the hell they want at the cheapest, investment of energy. Okay. It's anyway, I could start my LLC and go and do my thing. There's degrees of tragedy, but be careful. So this is number two, simply be careful of our entitlements. I have to be careful of my entitlement because I'm in control of my business. It's a paradox. I have control, so I don't have accountability. So it's a call to responsibility, responsibility, the ability to respond. It's a paradox that I have to break with my character. because I have control of my business. I am not accountable to anyone. I'm accountable to the market. I'm responsible based on, and this is my theory, tragedy. I'm going to respond based on, the depth of the inversion of my character, what I've been through that I don't like, that's going to drive me to work and get it done. So that's like that character piece. So I would say, ask oneself, have I fallen deeply enough where I'm willing to give up what could stop me from making this successful? Because I'm going to fail consistently with this thing, this business. I'm going to
So
fail.
are you saying that having gone through adversity or tragedy conditions you, so dealing with that, you're prepared for what's on the other side on the business, that it prepares you?
Yeah, well, it's below awareness, the impulse to cut off distraction, the impulse to go the extra hour on a Tuesday night, the certainty to tell someone you need me on your team. It's going to be tied to something, the inverse, a lack.
Do you think, I don't want to stay here for a second, that when you go through a tragedy and then you go into your business and you face some kind of adversity or something, that it allows you to say, oh, this is nothing because I've been through a lot worse? Is that what you're saying?
No, well, that can be a symptom of that.
Right?
Well, or I would say gratitude becomes an anesthetic of suffering. So you take anesthesia when you're going to get your leg chopped off.
Yeah.
And so gratitude becomes an anesthetic of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm saying, right, this is my theory of it, is that I'm not getting my leg chopped off. I'm just the leg.
No, you're getting your hair chopped off. But
so gratitude that's perspective, that can help cope, that can help alleviate suffering. I would say that a business owner that's going to be successful the way we view it in this capitalistic system, and they're going to create shareholder value, they're going to, be the martyr on the cross for their customers. They're going to, you don't need to have it together to create value. You just need to work, solve problems, be very productive and effective. And I would say there's a certain devilish pride in that. It's like, I just thought of this yesterday. I put it out yesterday about this. I'm not pursuing happiness. That's never been my pursuit.
it hasn't?
No, I'll tell you this is what I was thinking. I said, I'm telling you, you got to follow me on Threads because I'm putting this weird.
I don't have Threads.
Well, today we'll get it set up, dude. We're going to be threading each other. I said, personally, and no one even liked it, but so that's feedback. Oh God, I'm getting lightheaded. I love it. I go, personally, I've never been motivated by the idea of being happy. Man can only do what he wants, but man can't want what he wants. Schopenhauer. It's not happiness, but a whisper which drives me. So what I'm saying here is, number two, as a business owner, have you faced tragedy? Can you, what do your behaviors tell you? If someone has faced tragedy and they're not working, they're doing other things. It's a startup, let's say. It's the first 10 years. And that's a startup. And they're doing other things, not their business behavior. Okay. They are not self-aware to realize they're not invested. They're not invested in this sick endeavor. They're going to work for somebody else.
Go to number three, because I have another question. I know we're out of time. Number
three is, if you don't understand number one and number two, you're done. Woo! This is fun today. Tony got me.
Oh, you're on fire, brother.
Do some push-ups today.
Okay. Well, that took less than 30 seconds. So I do want to. So that is hysterical. And for those people listening, Jay told me before we got on the air that he's going to be clipping his locks on September 22nd. And it's going to be great.
We'll see if it happens.
Should people who have a business have a morning ritual? And
Uh, okay, I think how it manifests is important. Like if they have it because I said they should, then they're probably then I don't know if it's for them business. I would say if somebody look, we all do, whether we realize it or not. It's what it is. We all have morning rituals, whether we realize it or not. So
right.
the question is, what is the ritual, and is it increasing the likelihood of what you want or decreasing the likelihood of what you want? So ask
Okay.
myself that question. We all have morning rituals, and so the question is how effective is it as it relates to the goal of the business and the objectives.
So what is the ritual you would suggest if you have one, if you would suggest one?
It's funny. The first thing that came to my mind would be just a yell. Like, yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Just to
Yell?
yell. Yeah. Now,
Like
why am I saying that?
into a pillow or
No, just yell. Like, well, because I'm saying that because of course most of what I'm going to say is based on my own autobiography, whether I'm aware of it or not. But I'm aware of a lot of it, and it's that I'm at a juncture in our business where it's time for me to yell.
do you yell every morning?
Absolutely not. I'm giving myself advice through you.
I,
That's the
I want
value of the motivational speaker.
I want you to call me tomorrow morning and yell, scream.
Ah!
But I
So
think
yeah, like meaning we need a voice. I need a voice. I'm doing this to have a voice. Listen to what I have to say. Hear me, value me, care about me, give me an opportunity to serve you.
you deliver a lot of value to your listeners. We always try when you and I do this to give them a list or recipe for something, right?
Sure.
And which I think is great. Do you consider yourself a mentor?
Yeah. And the reason I do is because uh I'm constantly told that I am.
But
Yeah.
do you think right?
Yeah.
Do you feel
Yeah. I
like one?
mean, I have been blessed with this whisper. I've been blessed with having opinions, throughout my endeavor. But my in my falls, I've repressed my opinions. I've repressed my views. But those that I've given them to have consistently considered me such. Mentor Jay, advisor Jay, coach Jay, what have you. They'll use different words to express. And yes, I was born to be that. What I'm working on and have been. Now I'm not answering I'm too far down the question. So yes, absolutely, yes, very
Okay.
much,
So
huge.
I want to. I think you are. I know you are. So, and I won't mention this person because you probably don't know him, but there's a person that's on social media, and I know him, and he calls himself. He does all these posts and shit, right? I don't know where he gets the time. I mean, if you saw how long the posts were, it's absolutely absurd. But he calls himself, "This is so and so, and I'm your mentor for life." And his posts are such frigging garbage, fraud. I call it fraud, and I'll tell you why. It's all contrived, all all of it, right? I'm dying to post underneath one of his things saying, "So who took this picture?" I mean, you had to have somebody like take it. It's posed. It's like I'll give you an example. He This is the difference between you and him. One day he posted that he went into a 7-Eleven and the lady gave him too much change, so he drove back and gave her the money back. He said, "Oh, the lesson here is you shouldn't keep what's not yours." And I thought to myself, so you did a nice gesture, but you had to post about it, right? It wasn't right. See, to me, that's garbage. I mean, it's just freaking garbage, right? I mean, it's look at me and all these posts about, oh, always me. And I think this person died and this person died. Oh, and it's a picture of his mother's grave. And thinking, what is this? Right? Whereas your stuff is like really positive energy firing at me, right? So I ask you that because there's people that consider themselves mentors, and I don't consider myself mentors. I haven't learned anything from being disposed other than you might want to vomit. But your stuff is like real good stuff. So yeah, it's really good stuff. So in that on that note, give me someone says Jay Doran to somebody who listens to your podcast. What is the one? This is getting really hard. So this is really hard. They describe you in one word. What's that word? And you have 30 dun, 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 dun.
Curious.
They just they describe you as curious.
Yeah,
I you want to know what word I would come up?
please.
Insightful.
Thank you.
Insightful. You're a deep guy. I mean, you think of things that no one else thinks. You look at things in depth, whereas most people look at it on the surface. I look at things on the surface. I'm not. I don't. I've learned from doing these podcasts with you that I need to look deeper, not only into other things but into myself. So like I walk
I
away like,
appreciate the acknowledgement. I would say that I am kicking and screaming in a pool, trying not to drown, and everyone's kind of partaking in it.
does that drive you crazy that people aren't as in depth as you are?
I have my goal with the podcast, the Culture Matters podcast, has been to listen to people and lean into my assumptions and lean into the topics so that I can embody the spirit of curiosity and openness and love and more connected to people and connected to myself and not be cynical and resentful and lonely. And so I would say that I work on that isolation of feeling different with leaning into people, asking the questions, preparing, even those that I truly dislike with depth, I invite on the show. And I lean into my enemies. So
I want to ask
that would be my answer. By the way, one last thing, the Luke Skywalker, your buddy that's posting, Darth Vader, that's one of the things on the culture. It's a paradox. Life is just riddled with it, but of Darth Vader, right? Like, what would Star Wars be without Darth Vader? And who was Darth Vader? He was once a potential Luke. So it's like that I like my whole life at this juncture as a mentee, as a mentor seeking, as a mentee, as a mentor subconsciously, the impulse is to be that mentee to someone that can, it's both, and there's an interaction. I'm drawn to that. I'm drawn to Darth Vader, and I want to help Darth Vader take the mask off and tell the truth. And so that's that. I just think like that it's just something that came to mind.
I want to ask you this forever because I'm very cognizant of time, but I do have another question. That you said that. So you described yourself as curious, which is intriguing to me. So you are, and I've said this to you, you are one of the most prepared interviewers I've ever met. And Troy Korsgaard said this to me after you interviewed him the first time. I've never met anybody who interviews as well as Jay, ever.
Wow.
And it surprised me not because of knowing him, it surprised me because of he's just he's standard.
He's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
Works
So
very hard.
I want to ask you about the preparation. So because you are the guy when it comes to preparation, and I've learned from that too. So I am. Some people will say I over prepare for things, but I never do anything unprepared. In fact, um, I get annoyed if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, they try to sell me something," and I'll say, "Well, do you even know what I do for a living?" And they'll say, "Well, tell me more about your business." I will get annoyed because everything you need to know is on Google. Why didn't you just look it up? I had a guy one time call me to sell me accounting services. This is probably about 15 years ago, and I don't know how he got through the gatekeeper, but he did. And I talked to him, and he was great. And all of a sudden, the kiss of death was when he said, "Tell me what you do." And I was like, I said, you just shot yourself in the foot. You called me. You don't know what I do. He's like, well, click. So I want to ask you about this preparation thing because you are the king of preparation on these interviews. Do you ever get to a point when you're preparing for somebody and you go, this ain't gonna fly, no one's gonna give a shit, this person is boring, I don't know how I'm gonna get through an interview with this? Do you ever get to that point? And if you do, you say, look, I'm just not gonna interview the person. It's not good for my audience.
I will invite, well, if I have given someone my word, if I'm going to break my word, I'm going to have to go to them and explain to them why. That has yet to happen because I've decided in those cases, let's say I've changed my mind about the person, my opinion of them, to avoid the dogmatism, the autocracy, the dictatorship that I have, right? I'm in control. I'm God, which is not a good thing to be, by the way, I think. All knowing, all controlling, right? I'm the host. So to not play God, I tend to invite them on despite that and lean in. And the purpose of the podcast is to uncover the genius of our guest with the goal to make you, the listener, your curiosity cool, because our vision is that human culture is open, curious. So my point is I attempt to embody the belief, the purpose, the goal, the vision, the mission of Culture Matters podcast. And I've had plenty of people on the show that I thought very low of, and I do the best that I can to see the beauty in them. And I believe that is where I'm at in my journey, my walk of being a human being.
I know, but I want to get to this because it's important. But ultimately, the beneficiaries of the interview are your guests or your not your guests, your listeners.
Yeah.
So it's not really, so you could probably tell when you're interviewing someone, this is going to go or it's not. So you don't have to drop the podcast if you don't
Well,
want.
okay, so let me add some of the mix.
Does that make sense?
People are unbelievably interesting. People, I've never met a person that wasn't interesting. Because I am interested in
Come sit in this office for about an hour and you'll meet about 10 of them. You'll meet about
so
bro, you'll
question,
meet 10 of them. You will meet 10 of them if you sit in my chair, I'm telling you.
I I love this. So the short answer is yeah, and it's an opportunity. It's a challenge to me to think harder, ask the invisible question that's not there. You do it naturally and intentionally in our dialogues. You ask these insightful questions, and I would believe it's because you're open, you're curious, you're trying to engage with me on a personal level. I need to do that to not become the worst of me is how I look at it. And if I can do that with my enemies, I might evolve into who this whisper says that I need to become, or I want to become. So it's I have a story, but I'll tell you offline about that. Even I don't know if I can, but yeah, I have yep, that's it. Culture matters.
We ran out of time, but I I absolutely love this, and I
I'd
think
love to do an episode on podcasting, really, because I have a
well, you
whole
just read my
formula.
mind.
I have a whole formula for it that it could help people.
Well,
Probably.
you just read my mind because I see as much as this is part 6, it's part 1 of delving into you, and part 2 of delving into you is I want to ask you about doing podcasts.
I'm in.
All right, so maybe we could do that Wednesday if you want.
You want to close it out today for the audience?
I'm going to close it out by saying, folks, this guy's my friend, but he is about, and I'll tell you, he's one of the nicest people. He's the most insightful, in-depth person you could ever want to be around. And asking him questions is difficult because you want to ask about 1,000 questions. You just don't have time to ask him. Jay, you are, I mean, if they didn't get nuggets of information off this one, they're not listening. They need to re-listen to it. But I suggest we do part 2 this week because this was, I'm not done.
Love you, buddy. We'll see
Love
you
you,
all in
man.
the next episode of the Culture Matters podcast.